Hello guys! So today we're going to talk about PHP form validation. So in this part of the series, we're going to learn how to validate or check submitted user input, like checking the text format or pattern, or checking the number of required length of characters, and sanitization or skipping of data before it will be inserted into the database. Okay, so those are the things that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so what is form validation? Form validation means to check the submitted user input, like checking the text format or pattern, the number of required length of characters, or even sanitization or skipping the data. Okay, so there are two types of form validation. First, we have the client-side validation, wherein the validation is performed on the client machine web browsers using using JavaScript code or some built-in form validation using HTML5. So the other one is the server-side validation, wherein validation is performed after the form was submitted using a server-side programming language like PHP. Okay? So what is the main difference ba pagdating sa client side and sa server side validation? So basically guys, yung client side, as mentioned here, it is done on the part of client machine web browsers using JavaScript code and or some built-in form validation using HTML5. So what's the good things about using the client side validation is that once you submit the form, it automatically display some error messages kung meron man, or nababalidate agad using the browser, in the part of the browser pa lang. Okay, so there's no need to reload para lang ma-display yung mga error messages kung meron man. Okay, the bad thing lang kasi if we're going to implement yung client side lang is that yung client side, especially sa JavaScript code, pwedeng ma-turn off yung JavaScript sa part ng browser. So if that happen na ma-turn off na siya, then wala na tayong validation. Then what will happen if there are malicious users, then they can input some malicious data on our system that can compromise the entire process of our application. So hindi yan maganda. Same thing with the HTML5 kasi yung HTML pwede siyang ma-edit through browser temporarily. So once you edit that one, you can submit it. So hindi na siya na-validate. Okay? So that's the bad thing. So ngayon, let's try to know the server side. Yung server side, hindi siya matu-turn off ng browser. Okay? So always siya active. Ngayon, what's the downside naman? Kung hindi okay naman siya, hindi siya na-turn off. Okay? So the downside niya is that before ma-display yung page o yung error message, it will try to reload muna yung mga resources. So it start at the top part of the HTML document until to the bottom. Matapos lahat-lahat ng mga resources na ma-load muna before it will display the error message kung meron man. So that's the downside pagdating sa server side. Okay? So if you want to provide a better user experience for the user, I think mas mainam if you implement both. Kung hindi mo naman gustong implement both, at least kahit lang yung server side para safe tayo. Kasi dito na to turn off kasi siya sa client side. Okay guys, so in this part of the series, yung gagamitin natin is yung server side validation using PHP. Okay? Okay, so proper validation of form data is important to protect your form from hackers and spammers. Okay? So it is important. Basically, this particular lesson natin ngayon is to give you an idea kung how it is important na magkaroon ng form validation sa mga form na gagawin natin. Okay? Okay, so validation rules. Okay, so we have here yung form natin and table for our validation rules. Actually, this form is coming from the previous videos natin about the PHP MySQL database. So, ito pa rin yung gagamitin natin ngayon for our samples. In this part, we're going to implement the validations, form validation, this particular form. Kasi currently, yung form dito, wala pa siyang validation before. So ngayon, implement natin na yung validation na before siya ma-store sa ating database, we're going to check kung may laman ba yung first name, yung last name, specifying that it is a required element or input field, and also the email. And also checking if yung email ba is a valid email address, like having an at saka yung dot symbol. Okay? So those are the rules na i-implement natin sa form natin later on. Okay guys? Okay, so before we jump to our coding part, let's try to answer this particular question muna. How to avoid server PHP self-exploits? Kasi this is also part of the form validation or some security features na kailangan natin implement if we're going to utilize yung server PHP self. Okay, so what is the server PHP self variable? So the server PHP self is a super global variable that returns the file name of the currently executing script. Using the server PHP self in the form action attribute, it will send the submitted form data to the page itself instead of jumping to a different page. This way, the user will get error messages on the same page as the form. Okay? So if you are still remember yung sa form handling natin, we also make the form submit on the same page. But we didn't use the server page itself. Instead, we just leave the action attribute blank. Okay? So, yun ang ginawa natin before. Okay, so paano i-implement to? Ganito lang. Echo, then yung variable. Since it is a variable, it is an array kind of variable. Okay? Then, once it is executed or translated, ito na yung magiging code niya. So, sabihin natin ito yung current script or yung file. Okay? So, yung current file, hanapin niya, kukunin niya, then i-display natin. So, yun ang nangyayari. If you're going to use the server PHP self. Okay? So, the server PHP self variable can be used by hackers by injecting cross-site scripting or XSS commands. Okay? So, ano ba yung sinasabing cross-site scripting? So, or XSS is a type of computer security vulnerability typically found in web applications. XSS enables attackers to inject client-side script into web pages viewed by other user. Okay, so if we intend to use yung server PHP self, please try to consider yung security parts. Kasi sabi nga dito, it can be used by hackers. So, paano tayo makaka-avoid nun is there are just simple ways. So, let's try to consider muna ito that a user enters the following URL address bar. So, sabihin natin ganito yung code na nilagay niya. And once it is translated, magiging ganito yung code. As you can see dito, it is a JavaScript code. Okay? So, once that particular code executed, ganito yung mangyayari. Okay? So, what if guys, hindi lang alert message yung dinidisplay ng user? What if it is already a code that try to ruin or compromise the entire process of the system? Okay? So, that's a big problem if that happen. Okay, so there are ways kung paano natin gagawin yung ma-avoid yung pag-exploit sa server PHP self. So the server PHP self exploits can be avoided using the PHP HTML special cars function. Okay, so what is the HTML special cars function? The HTML special cars function converts special characters to HTML entities. This means that it will replace the HTML characters like less than and greater than with the ampersand LT or less than and ampersand GT or greater than. So this prevents the attackers from exploiting the code by injecting HTML or JavaScript code or the cross-site scripting attacks in a form. Okay, so how to do that? Ganito lang gagawin natin. We have this function here, and as a parameter or argument, ilalagay natin dito yung server page itself. So once it will be translated, ito na yung magiging output niya. So it's not, hindi na siya katulad nung kanina na kung saan it is a JavaScript code. Ngayon, it's just simple na mga HTML entities. Okay? So, hindi na siya mag-execute as the JavaScript executable code. Okay? Okay, ngayon naman, let's try this codes on our sample codes para makita natin ano ba talaga yung nangyayari if we try to implement or if we try to put the malicious code in our address bar, then without having the HTML special char function implementing. Then, after that, let's try naman kung what if meron na HTML special cars na function. Okay, so let me try to jump to my code muna para may pakita ko sa inyo ng mas maayos. Okay? Okay, so ito na yung code natin at nandito naman yung form natin. Okay? So, ang gagawin natin ngayon is maglalagay tayo dito ng yung PHP, yung server PHP self. Server PHP, it's capital. Self. Yan. Let's try to save that one. I-refresh natin. And let's try to view page source. And as we can notice, ito na yung nalagay. Which is, although wala siyang, kung titingnan natin yung URL, wala naman siyang index.php dito. Pero this is, since by default, di po ba, yung nangyayari kasi, since it is index, it is the default na pinaka homepage. Kaya this is the file na nagagather niya as index. Okay? So now let's try to make or to implement yung tawag nun, yung codes ng hackers, yung may JavaScript code. Okay, so I already have the copy of the code and implement natin siya dito. New tab ko na lang. Duplicate ko lang to. And palitan ko dito. So, yung ilalagay ko dito, this folder. Then, papalitan ko yung ito as the index.php. Yan. So, once that code runs, ito yung mangyayari. Yan. Diba? It runs the JavaScript code. Okay? So, tapos lang, okay lang natin. So, tingnan natin kung ano nasa source code niya. Yung nasa source code na ito na. Okay? So, yun ang mangyayari, guys. If nilagyan ng ganon, we try to use yung server PHP self without putting the HTML special cars. So, na-exploit yung variable na to. So, ngayon, implement naman natin yung HTML special cars. Okay? Tapos, ilalagay natin dito. Yan. So, let me just try to copy this code. Refresh na lang. Ay, sige, okay. Okay. So, run muna natin. So, view page source. Ano yung makikita? Okay, ganito yung makikita natin. So, once we implement this code, tingnan natin what will be the result. Yan. hindi na-execute yung JavaScript code nito. If we try to view page source, makikita natin na na-translate na yung script tag into a HTML entities. Okay, so that's how we avoid exploiting the server PHP self variable. Okay, guys. So before, okay, so we didn't use any action. What will happen kung i-remove natin to? And tingnan natin kung dito, view page source tayo. So wala siyang action. Okay. So kung dito, palitan natin yan. Dito na lang para one page lang. So if we try to run this one, so hindi rin siya na-implement. Then view page source, so wala din dito. Nakalagay na script. Okay, so yung empty also work kasi hindi naman niya kinuha yung current URL, but it will submit to the current page. Then hindi rin nag-execute yung basically yung code sa URL. Kasi nga, basically, in-exploit lang niya if we're going to use the server PHP self. But since hindi tayo gumamit, then hindi siya na-execute, basically. So it's up to you guys kung alin yung gagamitin nyo. Both ways naman works well. Basta, if you're going to utilize server PHP self, please use the HTML special cars. Okay, to avoid any exploitation na gagawin ng mga malicious users. Okay, ngayon, ibalik ko lang yung to para at least masanay tayo. Okay, so ngayon, let's go back to my presentation kasi there are other built-in functions ng PHP na pwede nating magamit for the form validation. Okay? Okay, so PHP built-in functions to be used in validating form data. First, we have the HTML special cars, which is yung kaninang ginamit natin, in which converts special characters to HTML entities. So this means that it will replace HTML characters like less than and greater than with this entities. So this prevents attackers from exploiting the code by injecting HTML or JavaScript code or the cross-site scripting attacks in form. Okay, so other than that, we have the PHP trim function in which it strips unnecessary characters like yung mga extra space, tab, or new line from the input user data. So basically, yung both left and right side, yung i-strip ang mga characters. Okay, mga extra spaces. That's the use of the trim function. Then we have the strip slashes function, which remove backslash from the user input data. Then we have the empty function, in which we're going to use it to check whether a variable is empty or not. Then we have the filter var function, in which it will validate and sanitize a data such as email address, IP address, URL, string, etc. Okay, so we're going to use yung filter option niya for sanitizing the email and also validating the email. Kagaya ng if merong bang at symbol and the dot symbol. Okay, so we have here itong tatlong function. This will be our common functions na gagamitin for all the user input. Okay, so ito naman empty is gagamitin natin to check if may laman ba or wala, especially if we're going to make a function that requires data for as a user input. Then, in filter var naman, gagamitin natin for validating the email addresses. Okay? So, those are the basic built-in functions na gagamitin natin on implementing the form validation. Okay, guys? Okay, now let's go back to the validation rules natin. So, ito yung mga rules. Okay, first name required, last name required, email required, and also must contain a valid email address with @ and the dot symbol. Okay, so In the previous slides natin, those are the functions na gagamitin natin to implement the validation rules for this particular form. Okay? So now, let me try to jump to my code para ipakita sa inyo kung paano ba natin na-implement yung mga validation rules natin. Okay? And it's displaying the specific yung mga error messages for the fields. Okay, guys? Okay, so we have here the code na naman. I already created a function or a file and meron tayong mga functions na ginawa dito. Then yung file, na-require ko na din dito sa index.php natin. Okay, so let me discuss muna itong validations.php natin. So in this first function, I name it as sanitize data, which is this is the common functions na gagamitin to sanitize all the user input. So I have here the trim to remove extra spaces for the left and right. Then we have the strip slashes, okay, to remove some unintended slash. Then we have the HTML special cars to convert any script or sabihin natin mga illegal characters into some HTML entities lang. Okay? So dito naman, meron akong another function, the validate required data, wherein I try to call the function of sanitize data to make sure na malinis yung data natin. Then, i-check ko dito. If hindi siya empty, using the not here, if hindi siya empty, then i-return ko yung data. Otherwise, I will return false. So, why is that? May return false ako para if ever hindi masatisfy yung conditions natin dito, then pwede akong mag-display ng error messages that this particular field is a required field. Parang ganun. Then, we have here yung validate email data, wherein first, of course, I sanitize. Now, I try to check if empty. Kasi kung empty naman yung data, hindi ko na kailangan i-check kung valid email pa siya or something like that. So, I just return an empty string. Now, if may laman yung email, then I try to remove muna yung mga illegal characters using the filter bar and having the filter option of sanitize email. Then, dito na part, I try to check if yung email address ba na naka-provide is a valid email. Yung meron ba siyang at symbol or the that symbol. Okay, so kung valid yung email, i-return natin yung email. Otherwise, magre-return tayo ng false for any error messages. Okay, guys? Okay, so let me tell you also, guys, what's the difference pa yung sinasabi nating sanitize and yung validate. Basically, yung sanitize, this is where we try to parang nililinis natin yung data. Okay? Dito natin nililinis. Okay? Ngayon, paano naman yung validate? Dito, chine-check lang natin if it follows the right format ba? Yung pattern na nire-required. That's yung validation. But yung sanitization, it is about removing illegal characters. Kung meron man. Okay? So, it mas mainam, before we store it in our database, we need to make sure that sanitized na siya and validated na siya. Okay? So, the good thing is that when it comes to saving it to the database, kasi we're using naman yung PDO, in which meron na siyang functionality for data sanitization part. Okay? So, no need to worry on that end. But before it will be submitted or will be stored, we also need to make sure na meron din tayo ang ginagawang pag-sanitize sa mga data. Para, it's better to have many na mga sanitization at validation. Okay? Para at least maging secure yung mga data process natin gagawin. Okay, guys? Okay? So, let's try those things on our form na itong mga function na ginawa natin. Okay? Okay, so in this part of our code, so as you can notice here, guys, wala pa tayong masyadong validation. Yung ginagawa lang natin is that once we receive the data or after the form was submitted, we try to gather the data and store it in our database using this function. Okay, so if we do that, and we try to submit without specifying, ito yung mangyayari. Diba? Parang nasa-save siya, pero wala namang data. If we try to go to our PHP admin, our database part, so makikita natin na walang laman yung data. Although dito mayroong active kasi by default, every time na insert tayo ng data is nagkakaroon ng active status. Okay? So, kaso dito, since we just submit the form without any value, ito yung nangyari. Kaya it is important guys na magkaroon talaga ng form validation sa ating mga form na gagawin. Kasi especially if yung mga data is important for further processes na gagawin natin for the system. Okay, so I just temporarily delete yung mga data natin para mag-empty naman siya. So first, let me try to show you guys yung sinasabi kong HTML built-in validation o form validation, mga ganon. So meron silang sinasabing required. So let me show you this one muna para at least magkaroon kayo ng idea. Yan. Save. So once we click this one, yan. That is the required built-in form validation ng HTML5. So, kapag maglagay ako dito ng data, then validation naman dito, then, ganun. Then, pwede na yan masave. Pero dito, it should be a valid email. So, yung gagawin natin, pwede rin, gawin natin yung text type to email. So, refresh natin. Raymond, Lailo, then sabihin natin ganito, ganyan. So, it will notify us na kailangan meron siyang @ symbol. Okay? So, that's how yung PHP built-in, yung HTML5 built-in validation function or form. Okay? So, yung sinasabi ko kanina, pwede nating i-manipulate yan through deleting the HTML, then pwede nang masubmit yung form. Katulad nito, i-delete ko to, then select ko naman to, i-delete ko rin to, then ito, i-delete ko to, then gawin ko lang text. Okay. Then if I try to submit without having any data, since na-delete ko naman sa browser yung mga HTML code, mga required built-in function, and I try to submit this one or save, yan. So as you can notice, nagkaroon pa rin ng data dito, ng blank data. So yun ang sinasabi ko kanina na okay lang siya if you want to have or to provide a good user experience in using your application, na madali yung validation niya, but it is important pa rin na meron tayong server-side validation. Okay? Kaya yung ituturo ko lang sa inyo guys ngayon is paano ba natin i-manage yung server-side. So ibalik ko lang yung kanina. Okay? Okay? Then let me try to remove yung mga data lang muna para fresh yung dito natin. Okay. Ngayon, ito na. So now let's try to implement na yung mga validation natin once the form was submitted. Okay? Okay. So the first thing na gagawin natin, we need to declare a variable errors, an array variable. So dyan natin ilalagay yung mga error messages na mga gathered natin. Okay, so this is our data. So first, we need to check if i-validate muna natin yung required input field. Okay. Huwag dyan. Dito na lang. Then, first, ipapasa natin ito. First name. Or, maybe we can directly pass this one. Ilagay natin dito. Then, ilagay natin dito. Para one line lang. Since required naman lahat ng input data natin. So, required data, automatically nakasanitize na rin yan. Ngayon, we're going to check. If the fname returns, ano yung requirement natin? Returns false kung walang laman. So, if it return false yung fname natin, so I use here 3 equal because I want to check also the data type of the return value. So, I use identical operator. So, if you're not familiar yet with this kind of operator, you can check my video about operators, PHP operators. Okay? Okay, so kung this particular return false, therefore may error siya, walang laman yung ftape. So yung gagawin natin, we're going to add data on our error variable. So ilalagay natin yung key name dito as the key. Para kung gusto man nating mag-individual display of error message, then we can do that. So let's say this using the first name field is required. Okay. Then next is we need to check the name. If return false, then the name, the last name field is required. Okay, then sa email naman, then kung walang email field is required. Now dito, check lang natin if yung count ng errors, since it is array, we can use the count function to check kung nagkaroon ba ng error. If the count function, it will return the number of elements na meron siya. So kung if it is greater than 0, therefore mayroong errors. Now, kung wala naman siyang error, then if it is equal to 0 or maybe less than, pero hindi naman siya magla-less than for sure, if it is equal to 0, then that's the only time na i-process natin itong pag-save ng data. Okay? So, ito yung errors natin. If ito yung code natin, kung walang laman yung errors or 0 yung errors, then save natin yung data. So, try natin muna. Close ko lang to, refresh, save. Yun, walang nangyari. Pero kung lalagyan ko ng data, hindi pa rin siya nasisave. Lagyan ko pa ng data, yan, nasave na. Pero unfortunately, we didn't check yet the email if it is a valid email address. Kasi yung tinest pa lang natin is yung required. Ngayon naman, paano natin malalaman if may kulang ako? Kung wala namang or merong hindi ko required field, kung hindi naman ako nag-display ng error messages. So, yan ang next natin gagawin. So, using the error variable here, so we can display the error message, let's say, at the top of the form, but bottom of the label. So, gawa tayo ng PHP tags here. Check lang natin. If this particular array is not empty, then therefore, we are going to display the error messages using the for each. So, yung value, itong key, assign natin message. So, pwede natin i-echo to. Sabihin natin message then BR. Yan. Okay, let's try that one. Hindi tayo mag-input ng data. Refresh ko muna. Then save. Yan. Okay, first name field is required. The last name field is required. The email field is required. Pero kung maglagay ako dito, dalawa na lang. Maglagay ako dito, isa na lang. Pero, manonotice natin dito na nawawala yung data, no? So, later on, I will try to share you also, guys, kung paano ba tayo magkakaroon ng sticky form dito. Na kung saan, once we submit this form, nawala ditong mga data, dapat yung data dito hindi ma-remove. Okay? So, those are the things that I will try to share you later on. So, dito naman, gawin muna natin is that, let's say, lagyan natin ng text color para at least maganda siyang tingnan. Lagyan natin ng span. Tapos, maglagay ako ng class of text error. Yan na lang. Then, itong class, let's try to implement this one here. Then, lagyan natin ng color red. Refresh natin. Dito na lang. Submit. Yan. Color red na. Okay? So, at least, manonotify yung user, required pala yung first name, last name, at saka email. Hindi ko nilagyan ng data. Okay? So, the next thing na gagawin naman natin for the error message is yung email address. Ngayon, if okay na yung email address dito, let's try to check. Else, check naman natin if valid ba yung email. Okay? So, let me try to copy dito. Then, papasa ko pa rin yung email natin. Ito. Okay. Then, yan. So, i-check rin natin. Let me just try to copy this code para mas madali. Okay. Then, if the email is returned false, therefore, hindi valid yung email. So, pwede maglagay, the email as field should, let me just copy dito ng code na to para field must contain a valid email address with at and that. Okay, let's try this one. Let's go to the code. Tapos, submit natin. Required. Remon, email, then mon. Save. Yan. The email field must contain a valid email address. That. So, save natin. Maglagay naman tayo ng right email. Save. Yan, na-save na. Okay? So, successful na yung process natin. So, ngayon naman, just like I mentioned to you earlier, guys, that I'm going to share to you kung paano ba magkaroon ng sticky form. So, madali lang yung sticky form na sinasabi. So, all we need to do is to implement that in our form. Ganun ko lang para at least madali yung pag-code. So, yung gagawin natin is to implement the code within the value attribute of the input. So, dito magkakaroon tayo ng PHP tags. So, we're going to check if set yung post data niya. So, ano yung post data? Basically, yung fname. So, if naka-set yung fname, then, i-display natin. So, you can have curly braces or kahit wala kasi basically, one line lang naman yung code. We can do that naman. So, if naka-set to, then, i-echo natin yung fname. Let's try muna. If ano yung output. So, refresh. Okay. Name. Tapos, hindi ako maglagay sa iba. Yan. So, yung form data natin dito is naka-display pa rin. Okay. So, yun ang gawin rin natin sa ibang form. Form input. Lagyan natin ito dito. Palitan natin ng mga keys sa post data niya. Then, same thing. Then, pagdating sa email. Okay. Okay, then email. Yan. Okay, so meron na tayong sticky form. Let's try those things. So, Raymond, sabi natin email. Okay. So, sabihin natin mali yung email na nilagay ko. Naka-display dito yung error message and naka-sticky form pa rin yung data natin. Okay, so lagay tayo ng tamang email na. Invalid pa rin kasi walang dot. Okay. Yan. So, na-save na yung data natin. Ngayon, as you can notice guys, nagkakaroon ng duplicate email dito, but it is for other process of validation. Actually, in making some user, you need to make sure as well that yung email is unique. Okay? So, that's the part na kailangan nyo nang gawin and kailangan nyo nang explore yung mga part na ganon. Okay, guys? So, let's try to check kung okay na ba dito lahat. Okay naman. Dito, okay, it works. Ulitin lang natin. So, lagay ako ng other email. Sabihin natin ganon, then save. Yan, na-save na yung data natin, which is dito. Okay, so, we already done with our form validation. Okay, guys? Okay, so, I think that's it, guys. So, I hope you learned something new today, guys, regarding our particular lesson today, which is about the PHP form validation. So, basically, we had learned on how it is important to have a form validation on our form na mga gagawin sa mga web application natin. How to avoid yung server PHP self-exploits. Okay, we also learned that one. Then, yung mga functions, built-in functions that we can use in terms of making some form validation and also sanitizing yung mga data natin. Then, I also share to you yung paano ba tayo gagawa ng sticky form na sinasabi. And also the two types of form validation, which is the client-side validation and the server-side validation. Okay, guys? So, those are the things that we have learned in this particular part of our series, guys. So, I hope it gave you a clear idea kung paano ba tayo gagawa ng mga form validation in the near future. So, you are not limited naman guys for the thing na na-share ko sa inyo. If you can find something much better, then you can implement. Okay, so the main goal lang naman ng lesson natin ngayon is that for you to have an idea on how it is important on having or validating data coming from the user. Okay? So those are the things that we had learned so far. Okay, so I think that's it. So just like I always say guys, just keep practicing and never stop learning. Thank you for watching guys and goodbye for now.